Welcome into Rounding the Bases, the podcast about culture and leadership with a baseball twist. My name is Joel Goldberg, and Rounding the Bases is presented by Community America Credit Union. I have a guest today who actually we met a while back. He's up in New Hampshire, and I wanted to have him on my podcast. He beat me to it and had me on his podcast. So I don't know if I'd say returning the favor. I just happened to go first, and now it's Charles Gaudet's time to step up to the plate, so to speak. I don't usually use that bad of a baseball pun. Anyway, he is the author of the Predictable Profits Playbook, the Entrepreneur's Guide to Dominating Any Market and Staying on Top. It was voted #1 book on sales and marketing by Indie Excellence. He's also the host of the 7 Figures podcast, which I was honored to be on. He's been an entrepreneur since the age of 4. He created his first multi-million-dollar business at 24, and he has helped serve others and generate millions with his strategy. He's received numerous awards and recognition, including founding a company named as one of the best seed stage companies by Ernst Young. He's received a certificate of leadership development from the U.S. Army War College, and has his business advice featured around the world, including Inc., Forbes, Salesforce, Success, Entrepreneur, and Fox Business, as well as having been on numerous podcasts. He was named one of America's Geniuses, top 50 industry influencers, and there's so much more. And I love the fact that in the bio it says he lives in New Hampshire with his beautiful wife, 3 adorable kidpreneurs. So I have a feeling that they may be following in Dad's footsteps. And it says 1 badass dog. And that is one heck of an introduction. And we bring in right now Charles Gaudet the second, I believe, right?
You got it, my man. Got it.
We could simply go with Charlie if I remember correctly. All of that means that at I think still a young age, we're all young, right? That you have accomplished a lot. And I also know it means that you probably have a lot more that you want to accomplish. But let me start with this. Tell me a little bit about Predictable Profits in your business.
Sure. So, I've been, as you mentioned, been an entrepreneur since a young age. I've been growing businesses virtually all my life. It wasn't until 2010 that somebody reached out and they asked me if I could help them grow their business. And that was at the point where I kind of sat back and I'm like, well, son of a gun, I guess I can make a living doing this. So I started growing businesses back in 2010. We've taken many companies over to the Inc. 5,000 fastest growing companies list. Typically companies are coming to us looking for one of 3 things. They're saying, what do we need to do to help our company grow faster? Or they're saying, some months are feast, some months are famine. How do we bring more predictability into our revenue? Or the third one is, hey, look, the company's far too dependent on me. How can I reduce this dependency so that I can scale? And we've done such amazing things even through the pandemic. And that's why, the International Business Times reached out, did a featured story on us, calling me the go-to business coach for 7- and 8-figure businesses, and then a whole bunch of other fun stuff that went there. So that's really Predictable Profits. We work with companies on average who are doing 7 and 8 figures, though we do have, some 9-figure clients and some startups as well. So I guess that's my quick elevator pitch.
Yeah, no, I like it. And there has to be, of course, in any successful business owner, there's that passion and that it factor that you wake up with every day. Maybe we call it our why and our purpose. So I'll ask you that when you wake up every day, what is that why for you? Beyond the obvious of taking care of your wife and kids and that badass dog too, what gets you out of bed every day?
It's funny. I had a very hard time actually putting this into words because everybody asks me about what's the why, what's the why, what's the why. And I had surveyed my clients and I asked them, like, why do you do business with me? Because I figured maybe they had the answer. And they said, you know what? You help us become better versions of ourselves. And I'm like, you know what? I think that really is the why. As a kid, I always wanted to feel special, especially going through grammar school. I was a kid that everybody kind of picked on and whatnot. And I always wished I could do more and be more. And I think as I was able to help other people achieve more and whatnot, I found a juice. And, it's one of those things that even if I didn't get paid for any of this stuff, once you get me talking about it, I'll never shut up. I just love talking about it. That's where I get my energy. That's where I get You take me in a Barnes and Nobles, I just naturally gravitate towards the business section or the personal development section or whatever that might be, always trying to up level my game, and then being able to transfer that information to as many people that care to listen.
That's what fuels you. And you talked about a little bit briefly about childhood there too. And I love on that bio, 4 years old. So what was childhood like? Where did you grow up? And what was that first entrepreneurial venture?
So I did have a great childhood. I had supportive parents and the whole deal. That being said, my dad was an entrepreneur. He worked every waking hour of every day. When he would get up and go to work before I'd get up in the morning, he'd come home after I went to bed, and this was 7 days a week. On the rare chance that I did cross paths with my dad, he would say to me, "Kid, if you ever want to make something yourself, you got to be an entrepreneur." And then when he had a bad day, and I happened to see him, he goes, "Kid, let me tell you something. Employees suck. Don't ever become an employee." Now, I don't agree with that last statement, because I think you and I both know, Joel, that to create an extraordinary team, especially today, is a huge, huge, huge competitive advantage. Most companies could never be where they are if it wasn't for people that they were able to surround themselves with and so forth. But that being said, that's a message that I kept receiving as a kid. So people tend to think, young entrepreneur, he was born that way. It's like, no, you know what? Some people do things out of inspiration. Other people do things out of desperation. I was desperate to get my father's attention, my father's affection, the whole deal. I started a business. It was originally selling artwork to neighbors. And from there, I just grabbed hold of that entrepreneurial bug, and I continued to go from one after another, after another, after another. And here I am today, in my 40s. And Freud would say, look, I'm still trying to, earn my father's, attention and affection and the whole deal. Yeah, that's my story.
So what was that bug really began at 4 years old?
Yeah, it did. And my mom used to laugh and say, my God, Charlie could never get hired by somebody. He could never work for somebody. And that's because I would, little kids you get, and as I went to high school, I might do something like scoop ice cream or whatnot. But I always had ideas like, what you could be doing differently, and how you can make more money, and what, blah, blah, blah. And it's like, I always tried to take a leadership role. I always tried to innovate, create new ideas and whatnot. I didn't like painting between the lines. And so for that reason, being an entrepreneur was much more in my I guess, my makeup.
It's interesting too, like looking through your bio and your past jobs on LinkedIn, and real estate development, or a real estate developer, and a lot of coaching in there. And then I think really kind of talked a little bit earlier about finding that sweet spot with your company and helping other companies. What was that aha moment for you, or how did all of those previous experiences lead you to ultimately founding this company?
It's a great question. By default, I love to teach. I love to share. If I find something new and exciting, I tell everybody about it. Like, you got to try this. This is so cool, And so usually I'm the first person to try something. I'm the guinea pig. And as I start to see results, then I want to expand upon it, and I'll do more research, and I'll share it with others. And then that builds our data pool and so forth. And back in 2010, somebody noticed that, I did well at growing companies, and they wanted my help. And that's when they offered to pay me. And at the time, I'm like, I don't know. Like, what do you think I'm worth? Like, I don't know what and I had a lot of fun with it. And every day is different. And, being obsessed with personal and professional development. And I've traveled the world. I've studied billionaires, centimillionaires, the whole deal. One of the unique advantages of my role is I actually get to work with some of the smartest, most brilliant people on the planet. And it almost seems a little bizarre for me that here I am getting paid to help people that are absolutely genius on the top of their game. And it feels, almost weird at times when I'm talking on the phone with a CEO doing hundreds of millions of dollars, or being flown to visit $1 billion company, or even just 7-8 figure businesses with many of their unique talents. But I get to learn from every single one of them. And oh man, even if I won a $1 billion lottery and had a stack of cash sitting on my desk, my life wouldn't change. I'd still do the same thing that I'm doing now, just maybe, slightly differently, but I would still be doing the same stuff.
Well, and that we talked before about waking up and getting out of bed. When you have a passion for what you do, and this, I know this, that not everyone is lucky enough to truly love what they do the way that you do, the way that I do. So it does, when you made that comment before about, not being paid for it, of course you want to be paid, but there's a beauty in saying, like, it's not the money that makes me feel good about this, right? The money helps you take care of your family and do everything that you need to do to be healthy and hopefully happy as well. But what a blessing to be able to love what you do and have that energy from that. And it sounds to me like you have that feeling every day.
Well, I'd like to think that I do. But, if you bring it to a sports analogy, right? In baseball, you're not going to hit a home run every time. Hell,
Sure.
You're not going to hit the ball every time. There are going to be plenty of times when you just strike out. And in business, much of that also happens to be the same. There are plenty of times when you just have a good game and you're smiling ear to ear and life is great. And then there are going to be plenty of times where you strike out. But if you love what you're doing and it's not just about hitting the ball, you're still going to show up to the plate every time. And the reason why passion is so important is because, Joel, I know you understand this. Not every day are things going to go well. You're going to be faced with the challenges. And during those moments of challenges, you're going to have doubt, lots and lots of self-doubt. And you're going to wonder if you're going in the right direction. There are going to be times when you want to quit more than anything else in the world. But it's going to be that passion that keeps that fire alive. And it's going to be that passion that's going to take you through those moments of adversity, that challenge, that struggle. That's why passion is so important, because that might be the only thing that you have to take you over that next barrier or obstacle, whatever that might be.
Couldn't agree with you more. And, that can fuel you over and over again. And learning how to handle the negatives, to handle the bad moments, to learn from those and to be able to push forward. That's why I say this so often. That's why I love baseball as a teaching tool, because it's a sport of failure. And I tell audiences all the time that, look, if your business is only successful 30% of the time, that's not going to fly as it does for a hitter in baseball. You're successful 30%. But what baseball players, they're the good ones, know how to do is how to handle failure, how to get back up and keep pushing the next day. And so you deal with that a lot with a lot of your clients. And I was looking through, and of course, like any good website, and let me tip people off here, the website is predictableprofits.com. Like any good website, you have some amazing testimonials on there, as you should. And I was just looking through them, and they of course all have to make you feel so great. But one stood out. It's been a lot of years since I've heard this name, Danny Shays, MBA entrepreneur. I remember him, when I was growing up, and we're similar age, but you and I. But it said, the more time I spend with Charlie, the more I appreciate his wisdom and experience. A true giver, Charlie will do what it takes to help anyone succeed. He is a rare person who makes a difference. So I guarantee you that the first time you saw that, it had to have felt good, because I know what those are like when they come in. He's like, wow, somebody's saying that about me, and I have that impact on them. Now, the fact that he's a former NBA All-Star, even better. But how amazing is it to know that you can make an impact on someone's life and someone's business like that?
Well, that's ultimately what it comes down to. I'm a core believer that you get paid in direct proportion to the value you bring to somebody else's life. And so that really ultimately is a game. And I think when you get a testimonial or endorsement like that, it's just confirmation that you're going in the right direction. And, it feels good. And, I mean, that means more to me. Of course, obviously the company name is Predictable Profits. Obviously, I want to be able to make money and so forth. But it means more to me when I know that I can make a difference. And it is good. It's comforting.
All right, let me hit you with the baseball theme questions, and let's begin with the home run, because I think you kind of articulated this before too. It's not all about home runs, and that's the part of the daily success, stepping up to the plate, just hitting the ball. But there are big moments too. We need to celebrate those. What's the biggest home run you've hit in your career?
That's a really good question. And it's funny that it comes off the back of the last question that you talked about, the testimonials, right? Because the first thing that I think about is, how I've been able to help my clients. Like, my home runs are almost directly attributed to that of my clients. I mean, we helped an agency go from about $1 million a year to 24.1 within 3 years. Helped another company doing about 250,000 to 4.6 million within a year. Like, when I look at what makes me so proud, it's like, my God, the fact that we can do that. That, man, it's hard even to name one. I look at my kids. I look at my kids right before coming to this podcast, and I'm telling my kids about you and that I get to be on this. And I'm like, man, I mean, how grateful. I just feel so grateful that, somebody like yourself would invite me to your podcast and find value in this conversation, what I might be able to share to your audience. So I look at this as really a culmination of a number of different home runs, not just one, I suppose.
The feeling's mutual on that too, because I felt the same way. I didn't say it to my kids or anything. They're teenagers. They don't want to hear, what I've done. but no, they're not watching or listening, I promise. But, it's just, and I think that's one of the beauties of all of this too. It's a really interesting observation with the home run, because from that come all of these opportunities, right? A mutual friend introduced us, Ryan O'Connell, who's here in Kansas City and is such a great guy. And I didn't know him probably before the pandemic. I met him along the way. That's one of the beauties of, to me, entrepreneurship is just these connections that you keep on making, and these kind of limbs to the tree that, and branches that keep kind of sprouting out. I don't know if I'm explaining that right or not. And you know where they're going, but they're kind of pieces to the puzzle. They're blessings along the way. I don't know if that's too cheesy or not, but I think that we're probably in agreement with that.
Well, I think it's true, right? Because life is a lot about a journey, and it's about all the different wins and the culminations. I don't believe I've hit my big giant home run yet. I think I've had a lot of wonderful successes along the journey, and wonderful hits across the board. But just because I had one great home run, that now is behind me. It's like, well, what about the next one? And what about the next one? And can I hit the next one even further? And can I hit them more consistently maybe next time? Not just one, but how many times can I do it in a row? Can I improve my average? And sometimes it's not just about the home runs. It's how many times can I hit a single, double, triple? How many times can I let somebody else, can my hit be the result of somebody else getting there, sliding into home?
Okay, I did that. Now what else can I do?
Well, look at Richard Branson, right? And I think that's a perfect example. Richard Branson started with a magazine company, and he had at the time, at that age, he hit his home run. And then he went to Virgin Records, and he hit his home run with Virgin Records. And then he went to Virgin Airlines, and he hit a home run with Virgin Airlines. And he's an entrepreneur with 400 different companies, multiples of billions of dollars. But it's, what's next? What more can I do? How can I hit this further and be more magnificent? And then he goes to space, and who knows what's next? But I am certain to believe that in his mind, he's already starting to ask himself, what can I do that's even further than that? It's pretty wild.
Well said. How about a swing and a miss? And what did you learn from it?
Well, then again, there's been multiple swings and misses, right? I would say probably one of my biggest, um, well, there's been several times in my life where I've lost lots of money. One time I was in over a couple $100,000 in credit card debt. Another time I was nearly homeless, just within a couple $100 of being homeless. Um, and it was a swing and a miss. It was large risks that I took, and it was poor decisions. And back in the day, and that was when the most recent was when my kids were really, really little, and I took a big risk. But what the lesson that I learned from that was actually, metaphorically speaking, if you happen to notice that you when there's traffic on the highway, you look over to your left, you look over to your right, and you're like, it seems like these lanes are moving faster than the one that I'm in. So you move over and you get to the other lane, and it's like as soon as you get to that other lane, the lane that you were in started moving. And then you're like, oh man, I'm going to get back in that other lane. And then you get back in that other lane, and then the lane that you were just in started moving. And when I look at the biggest mistakes that I made, the ones that cost me the most amount of money, it was because I wouldn't stay in my lane. I looked at, it was almost like chasing that shiny penny, that there was an opportunity that was better than the one that I was in to the left. So I went over there, and there was another opportunity that was better. And I went over there, and I went over there, and I went over there. And I was too focused. Earlier, we talked about passion and we talked about money, and we put those into two different buckets. I was more focused on chasing the money, less focused about being really understanding of who I am, what is my passion, and staying in that lane, allowing myself to be the best at what I'm great at. And that was my biggest miss, that I just bounced too much from one opportunity to another.
It's a phenomenal metaphor, not just for business, but for life, especially in this world that we're living in where everybody wants everything right now. Everything is instantaneous. Yeah. And that whole journey and staying the course doesn't mean you stay in the same lane the whole time. You do sometimes have to move out of it, but oftentimes we move out before we should because of chasing that shiny object or impatience or whatever it is. So I love that metaphor. And then the last baseball theme question, small ball. And you've really alluded to this throughout this podcast too, Charlie, about you don't have to hit home runs every time. That's why I love the small ball topic. That's why I ended up writing my book, Small Ball, Big Results, because it doesn't have to just be baseball. We all can play small ball every day by doing the little things and doing them with intent, because when they become habit, they do lead to big results. So for you, what is small ball?
Oh, wow. That is a really, really great question. For me, what is small ball? So I used to train at CrossFit, and one of the sayings that they had on the wall is better than yesterday. Right. And so I'm a big fan of taking action, but even more important than that, taking imperfect action. And so I'll take that imperfect action. I'll look at the data, because I'm a big fan of there are reasons and results. The only thing that matters is the results. So the reasons can stay aside. When I take the action, what is working and what's not working? And so, small ball for me is just being consistently taking imperfect action, consistently being uncomfortable. In fact, being comfortable being uncomfortable, if that makes any sense. Heck, just as a quick side note, talk about, you want to know how crazy I can be sometimes. I've started getting in this habit. I really am so keen on making sure that I'm comfortable being uncomfortable. When I get up in the morning and I go to take my shower, the first thing that I do is I put that shower on cold. And I look at that shower and I stare at it, and I'm like, I don't want to get in right now. But I know that in order for me to take my shower, I've got to get in that water. And so I get in the water and I lean against the back wall, and the cold water is splashing my feet. Then I start putting my legs in, and then my head in. And once my head in is, I'm like, oh man, if I stand up, all that water is going to go down my back and it's going to be even cold. I'm just going to get in so I can get to the hot water. And I get in, and then I make sure the water gets in. And then I allow myself to get to the hot water. But I start my day with a reminder that, I'm being comfortable being uncomfortable. I'm making a tough decision right off the bat. And as with all life and whatnot, when I talked about the times that I lost money, I also lost money when I got too comfortable. I took my foot off the gas pedal. And whether you're a business owner or whether you're in you have a job or whatnot, it's never allowing yourself to be comfortable even in that job. What do you need to do to get to the next promotion? What do you need to do to enhance and improve your skills to get that much better? Just being uncomfortable. And most of us are scared, to take certain actions. If we just kind of leaned in a little bit.
You're tougher than me. I get all the point of that one.
I'm a little nuts. What did we talk about earlier about normal and nuts, right? I could be a little crazy.
I got plenty of nuttiness in me, but it's not coming with the cold shower unless I just got done cutting the yard and I'm like overheated or working out and I need to cool the body down. But my day is not starting that way. There's so many guests that I have on. I'm like, if I try that, and I'm like, Charlie, I'm not trying it. Okay. I get it. I fully get it. I'm not trying it, but actually it's very powerful. It leads me now to my 4 final questions as we round the bases. It's a good segue for me to hit you with my first of that is that I know in your bio, it mentions Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu.
Yes.
2 gold medal finishes, 3-time wrestling state champion, also wakeboarding. Tell me about these endeavors, and those sound like pretty tough things to do.
I mean, it is what it is, but it's one of those things. I sought out who I believed were going to be the best people in the industry in order to help me. The guy that trains me in Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu, he's number 8 in the world within his category. When I was wrestling, I went out to see Dan Gable, who I'm sure you've heard his name quite a bit. Trained with him for a couple of years in order to make sure that he could take me from a guy who knew nothing about wrestling to becoming state champion within 4 years, because I was competing with other guys who had been doing this for many, many, many more years. Mm-hmm. At the end of the day, the biggest thing that I realized in training with the gentleman who does the jiu-jitsu, I learned the exact same techniques, or I learned them when I was a white belt, the exact same techniques that he teaches people who are black belt. The difference between a white belt and a black belt, though, becomes the subtle nuances and differences. So when we look and we compare ourselves against different professionals, business leaders or whatnot on the surface, everybody looks at them and everybody can see the same thing. And they're wondering, what is the big secret? What is it that we're not seeing? In jiu-jitsu, and as you become more seasoned, you may realize the difference between winning and losing might be whether your thumbs are down or your thumbs are up. People say, I don't understand. How do thumbs down, thumbs up make a big difference? If your thumb is down, your elbow becomes disengaged from your side, and it's easier for somebody to attack the arm. So if my opponent has his thumbs down, I know that I can attack the arm more readily. The moment the thumbs are up, that elbow gets tucked into the side, and it's really, really difficult to get that arm out. So I know I'm protecting my arm, or if I'm attacking somebody, I know I'm going to go for something else or try to get that arm disengaged. So, there's parallels in business. You can see opportunities a little bit differently with experience. You try to wonder, like, are the thumbs up, are the thumbs down, and so forth. In addition to yourself, with surrounding with people who can point those little distinctions out to you that may not be apparent to the naked eye.
Yeah, these are the little things again, and very much resonates with me in the baseball world, where I, on a daily basis, see guys trying to fix the smallest little mechanical issue that sometimes you can't find. And once they do, it unlocks everything. It's attention to detail, yeah. I think, and I'm sure one of the many lessons you get. All right, second question as we round the bases. Tell me about the podcast. I mean, I know I was on it, but which shouldn't be that big of a deal. But you've had a lot of really cool guests too. How much do you enjoy your podcast?
Good. It's called the Beyond Seven Figures podcast. I did that not only for the benefit of the listeners, but for the benefit of myself as well, as I go to pick the brains of some of the most brilliant people on the planet, yourself included, to find out, what are the different experiences, knowledge, and whatnot that you can share with me and with our listeners, that can, help to, again, point whether or not somebody's thumbs are up or thumbs are down. Like, what are the subtle distinctions that are helping other individuals, companies, whatnot, pave their way to success?
All right, so let me hit you with a somewhat similar third question, because you talked about studying billionaires around the world. I mean, I think one of the beauties of what you've been able to do is you've had the ability to get access to people to learn from, to then take those lessons and share them with clients, share them with others, share them on a podcast. And that's one of, to me at least, still being in my 40s for a little bit longer, one of the joys of sort of this part of life is that, to me at least, I feel like I have this opportunity now to take all those life lessons and share them with others as others did with me. You've mentioned Dan Gable. I don't know if I put him in the billionaire category, but in terms of wrestling, he for sure is in the billionaire category. You mentioned Richard Branson. You've studied all these people. Is there a common theme when you start dealing with, whether it's billionaires or just people at that level, people that are the best at what they do? Have you seen a common theme, or is there something that has really stood out to you that you've taken something? And I know you take something from everyone, but what have you pulled away?
Well, the biggest thing, and it actually comes up every single day for me, is it's mindset. And when I say mindset, it's not just having a positive mindset. It's an understanding that with every challenge comes an equal and opposite opportunity, and every opportunity comes with an equal and opposite challenge. And not only did I discover that in working with and studying and whatnot, the different billionaires, centimillionaires and whatnot, but I found it amazing when I attended the U.S. Army War College as a civilian, and I'm there to, for their leadership seminar, and listening to all the colonels and the generals and whatnot talking. And they were asked a question, and the colonel says, well, here's the pros and here's the cons. And anytime they're making a decision, they make sure that whatever their pro argument is, it has to be as strong as their con argument. And when I asked the colonel, why do you go through that thought process? He said, because all the decisions that we make are so important. They're a matter of life and death. Wisdom is only seeing things by one side. There's always two sides to every coin. And when I look at, the billionaires and the centimillionaires and whatnot that I met, they always said, look, every challenge has an equal and opposite opportunity. So now if we go to, say, 2020, when 2020 happened, for most of us, that was the biggest challenge that we've had in our lifetimes. So right off the bat, taking the lessons that I learned from everybody else out there, first question I ask my clients is, why is now the best time in the world for you to be in business? And for some of these people, they're like, what are you talking about? Do you know I'm in the travel industry? Do you know I'm in restaurants? Do you know I'm in that? I go, why is now the best time in the world for you to be in business? And so each of them took some time to start to think about, where are the opportunities right now? Why could now be the best time for us to be in business? The restaurant client I was telling you about, he had the best year he had ever had on record. The travel client that I was telling you about, he had, not only did he have the best year that he had on record, his company is the number one fastest growing company in his niche in the entire world. While his major competitors went out of business and every other competitor scaled back. But it was because everybody was looking at the negatives, because it was the apparent thing. But now let's look at the positives. But the same thing happens on the flip side of the coin. When things are going super, super well and you get a windfall of profit and you're like, woohoo, you're high-fiving everybody. You're I'm popping the bottle of bubbly. Where's the challenge in this moment? What do we have to prepare for? And we're keeping centered as much as possible. So that's where I would say the most valuable part that I picked up is, because I'm realizing the whole time, I'm not allowing myself to go this, that. I'm trying to stay centered as much as possible. There's a challenge. Why is now the best opportunity? There's a massive win. What's the challenge in that? And I'm trying to stay in the middle and understanding, what are both sides of what's really happening so that we can be prepared.
Yeah, so fascinating. And with adversity and tough times always comes opportunity. You have to see it, and you have to obviously work towards it. Final question for me. It's the walk-off. This will be a a more personal or light one, I think. But you talked about first becoming the entrepreneur at 4 years old. Your bio suggests 3 adorable kidpreneurs. I don't want to minimize your wife either. She's mentioned first, your beautiful wife. But when I see 3 adorable kidpreneurs, are they showing early signs? Have they shown early signs of following in their father's footsteps? What are they doing?
Well, I will say my wife and I co-founded a couple businesses together, and then she made the decision to take the hardest job of them all, which is to manage the 3 kids, right? So, and that, let me tell you, that is definitely the hardest job of them all.
No doubt.
So yeah, you know what, the kids, my son has started his own business, and he's very gung-ho, very, very motivated to start it. My daughters have talked about wanting to start their own business. They have done little things here and there. I'm very careful, though, not to push them into entrepreneurship because, as you know, Joel, if you don't, like we talked about earlier too, if you don't have the passion, you do end up going through some pretty hard times, and that passion is going to carry them through. They are showing signs of entrepreneurship. My son, right before our podcast, was like, "Hey, Dad, I need you to help me with some lead generation efforts that he's doing." So naturally, he's motivated. He does that without any sort of motivation. But I tell all my kids all the time, whatever it is that you want to do, it doesn't matter if you want to work for somebody else, if you want to work for yourself. Just make sure that you love it. Because if you love it, you're going to find a way to become extremely successful, no matter what it is. You can find millionaires in every single category, in every single role. There's these famous stories about, postal people who, had been making minimum wage for a long time, and then they retired, uber millionaires. So there's ways that you can become successful. But the kids... the kids, they do get influenced by Dad. They see the life that entrepreneurship has been able to create for them. Inevitably, they're inspired, and I'm just proud of them for who they've become so far, and just hoping I can just continue to be their guide, and whatever direction it takes them, it takes them.
Best job in the world. And yes, indeed, for those of us who have spouses that are oftentimes the primary figure in raising those kids. And God knows that with my baseball travels and all of that, my wife does all the hard work and the heavy lifting, but it's pretty amazing to watch the journey and hopefully be that influence as a father. And then you see what lane they pick and where they go, and try to help guide them a little bit along the way with the journey. So amazing story. I know I said it at the top of the podcast. There'll be so much more to come because that's the way that you're wired. A lot of cold showers ahead for you, Charlie.
I wish one day, I hope it gets easier. I don't know, but it is what it is.
It is what it is. I'll maybe one morning I'll just get the urge, and if I do that, I'm going to be sending you an email, either swearing up and down or thanking you. I'm not really sure. We'll see how it goes.
But you start the day off winning, right? Because you start the day doing something you don't want to do, and you start the day already with a win.
Yeah, I feel like I'm the guy that is already, when I start my day, I'm already trailing in the bottom of the first inning and having to play catch up. So we'll see. Charlie Gaudet is the CEO and founder of Predictable Profits. You can check out more on them, on him, on his company, on his people, what they do at predictableprofits.com. It's been fun. Thanks for having me on your podcast. Great to have you on mine. And thanks for all the great insight, Charlie.
It's my pleasure.